right, so welcome back everybody to our latest episode of The Nest. As promised, we are back today to recap the United States men's soccer team 3-1 loss to the Netherlands yesterday. And joining me for today's episode is Rohan Venkatesh and Anirban Chakraborty, who's joining us through audio.
Thanks for having me. And yeah, sorry my camera's off for a little bit. I'll try to get it on soon.
Yeah, I must say, I probably did overestimate this team, considering what I said 2 days ago on the show. But even then, I'm very proud of this team. They did whatever they could. They made some crucial errors in the previous match, but I think this is a young squad that has a bright future, and they put it all out there on the pitch. And credit to the Dutch side. I think they did a fantastic job. They're one of the few teams that really were undefeated through the group stage. So were the US. So those were things to potentially take into account. Granted, I was a little over optimistic, but I like the Netherlands. I really do. I guess I'm free to say that now. One day after all the match is all said and done. I do remember traveling back there in 2012, and it was a fun experience. I got to try the local food over there, and I got to eat around in various places, and their Indonesian food scene is pretty amazing. But that just gets to show you like what a global game this is and what a global experience this is, and how this deeply affects people from different parts of the world. So I mean, congratulations to the Dutch. I think the future is bright. Granted, they'll have to face Argentina the next round, but from an American perspective, I'll have to say, yeah, of course it's disappointing, but at the same time, it's on to 2026 from now.
Yeah, I mean, let's just.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, go on.
Oh no, you can go ahead, Amartya.
Oh no, I'm just basically going to kind of do a recap of the game, and we were just going to talk about it. So obviously, in the 3-1 loss, like Christian Pulisic had a great opportunity in the third minute, but it was saved by Andres Noppert, who's the Netherlands keeper. I thought he had a pretty good game,
and I believe the
overall.
tallest goalie, if I have that right as well.
Yeah. I think he's 6'8". But I mean, anyway, like I thought he did a great job. Like the one goal that the US got from Haji Wright in the 76th minute, that was kind of like a really wacky play that somehow it just went into the goal. Like honestly, the US had better shots than that attempt, but that was the one that got by Noppert, kind of on a fluky-ish play. But I mean, overall, like I was a little disappointed by the defense. I feel the defense kind of had a letdown. Like the first goal by Memphis Depay, Tyler Adams had a breakdown on defense, and that allowed Depay to basically get that goal. The second goal too was a little bit right just before halftime.
That was the death blow. That both were atrocious.
I mean, I think it was just overall the defense. Like after a pretty strong showing against England, it was a little
can't
disappointing.
hand gifts like that to a Dutch side and expect to get away with it.
Yeah, I mean, Tyler Adams, the captain, he even spoke about inexperience at the end. But I mean, I think more than that, it also just shows like right now the gap between the US team versus like some of the best teams in Europe is still pretty sizable. Like obviously, yeah, the US is not like I wouldn't even say that they're that much less talented than Netherlands. Like obviously Netherlands is a more talented team, a better team. But the thing is like sometimes it's these mistakes, right, that you make. That's the difference between like a good team and like a great team. So that's sort of like what my takeaway is. It's a little disappointing that they lost like 3-1. Like I was hoping for a more competitive game. Obviously, I did predict 2-0 Netherlands. So the US did get a goal and Netherlands got one extra goal. But overall, like it was a little disappointing. I was just hoping for a little bit more of like a fight from the US team. And that's the thing. Like, obviously, it was a good performance. They got it out of the group stage. Germany didn't even make it out of the group stage. So, I mean, props to the US for making it that far.
I was about to say that because for those of you who do have access to our video feed, if you're looking at what Amartya is wearing, it looks very much like the German flag.
Yeah, I mean, right now it's sort of. Yeah, I mean, look, I mean, I think overall, like the US, like, I mean, they played okay, but like the third goal at the end by Denzel Dumfries, who I think
that was the
in my opinion, he was the man of the match.
I don't really blame the US.
Would you agree
Dumfries
was the man of the match?
I kind of blame him. I definitely blame him for the first goal.
Who? Blame who?
I blame the US defense for the first goal. I definitely blame them a lot more for the second goal. The third goal, I don't blame them as much for that because at that point it was basically desperation mode, and the U.S. team was already like pushing all their players forward. I mean, granted, they were kind of doing that from the beginning itself because I feel like that the U.S. team kind of saw that pushing for a goal early on and putting all your players forward worked. I mean, it definitely worked like in that game against Iran, but I mean, playing against Iran and playing against the Netherlands are two very different propositions. I like for the U.S. team. For the U.S. team, I would say that they made things exciting. They push forward consistently. At the same time, though, it pretty much led to some kind of rookie mistakes. They were kind of caught on the back foot on those two counterattacks. Well, you could call it a counterattack, but I would say that this was an example of how the Dutch discipline really prevailed, right? Because in the early stages of the game, when the U.S. was dominating the ball, the Dutch just kind of sat back and they let the Americans have the ball. Once they got to the defensive zone, once the Americans got to the offensive zone, the Dutch defense was kind of there to shut it down. And then once they got possession again, they were able to methodically pass it around. This is kind of what I mentioned in the last episode, right? That they don't like to let go of possession. They like to play the wings and all of that, right? And what I also said in the last episode was that if the U.S. were to have a chance against this Dutch team, it would have to come down to man marking, and that happened to some extent. But there were two gross errors in the sense that they were kind of ball watching, especially with the first two goals, which kind of looked identical, if you ask me. Right, both of them were both of them were kind of like room service passes from outside the box, which kind of which are kind of like centering passes, which really had no one marked. I think the U.S. defense was kind of caught off guard because they might have thought that nobody was around, but they didn't see those runs. Of course, first one by Memphis and the second one by Daley Blind. So I would say that I would say that this is not an untalented team by any means. I mean, I think the U.S. team has a bright future. I mean, this is a young team and they've shown their skill and they've held their own against quality sides like England, for example. But I think their inexperience really showed in this match. But I think that these are a group of guys who are willing to learn and if they watch film and watch the tape over and over again, they'll see the tactics and they'll see what were the spaces that were unmarked. Especially when you have the middle of the middle of the penalty area pretty much unmarked and allow for runs into that area. That potentially allows gifts to better than average sides. Such a strategy may have worked against other sides like Iran in the previous match, but I think in this match against an experienced, disciplined side like the Netherlands, the Dutch are going to make you pay, and they surely did.
Yeah, if I could just add really quick. I mean, first of all, I would argue that the third goal was very much like a breakdown in communication, mainly because Robinson and Tim Ream, our left back and center back, ended up man marking the same person, which in the box, which left Humphreys to come in and what should have been, I think, Robinson's area and essentially have a tap in. I mean, look at all three of the goals. Matt Turner was pretty much frozen on all of them. There was really nothing he could do because all of them ended up being kind of one-on-one tap-ins. But I'd argue the third goal, yes, we were definitely pushing everyone forward, and that's what gave the Dutch the opportunity to come in to our final 30 yards. But the final ball, I mean, if Robinson's marking Humphreys there, at least makes it a little difficult maybe to contest the pass. So I would say that was a breakdown as well, though I understand that point, I'm sure they're all really exhausted and we're chasing the game. But I think the other thing to know, like, first of all, I do echo what you said, that I think there is a lot to be happy with. I mean, compared to, for example, not making the World Cup in 2018 to, getting a draw with England, getting out of the group, and really for a good portion of the game, keeping it pretty close. I mean, lest we forget that the third goal came pretty late in the game. It was 2-1 for a lot of the second half. But, in terms of what we can kind of learn from the game, I think in terms of experience, one way we talk about experience is also, I think, being clinical and taking chances. And I think the U.S. will kind of leave the game kind of ruining some of those, like Pulisic's shot that was saved. But we saw that against Wales too, for example, where the U.S. had multiple chances to put the game away and instead really kept it 1-0, which allowed Gareth Bale to come back in. And when you look at the U.S. what they were playing with I believe it was a 4-3-3 with an inverted number 9 position. they didn't really seem to be playing with a true striker on their squad. Maybe they had, I think Jordan Morris came on off the bench, but they didn't seem to be playing as much with a striker. They had a lot of creative players like Tim Way, Pulisic, McKennie, but not necessarily a true number 9 center forward. And in international football in the World Cup, the most successful teams really do have that kind of number 9 striker position. Whether it was Olivier Giroud for France, Miroslav Klose for Germany, obviously Ronaldo for Brazil. I mean, you can go on and on. And when you don't, you end up playing like teams like Germany in the Euro 2016 with Timo Werner, or Spain with I don't remember who their kind of forward was. Maybe it wasn't Alvaro Morata, but the point is you end up playing like teams like Germany in 2016, Spain in 2018, play a lot of possession ball. We had 58% possession, but you don't have that necessarily that true number 9 who's playing in that number 9 position. So I think that's
Spain, by the way, had David Villa.
No, but I'm talking about 2018.
Oh, okay.
So the point is the point I'm making, like you could look at Germany, like they're playing like Timo Werner for a little bit too, but the point is when you don't have like in the World Cup, at least pretty much every successful team has some out and out clear striker, and I don't think we necessarily were playing with that, and that's one reason I think that we ended up having 8 shots on target to their 6, but only 1 goal to show for it.
Yeah, I mean, I also just want to emphasize, like, Matt Turner, I mean, I was very impressed with his World Cup performance. Like, obviously, as you said, like, the 3 goals he allowed against Netherlands, like, I really can't blame him for any of the goals he allowed this World Cup. Like, one was on a penalty.
It was a defensive breakdown.
And 3 on, like, I mean, 3 of them were pretty much a defensive breakdown. So, like, I mean, I thought Matt Turner overall, like, I was very happy with his play overall. And it was just a little bit kind of disappointing to see sort of the defense sort of play like this after like a strong showing in the group stage, like a very strong showing. But I guess it just sort of shows you at this point, like kind of the talent gap and I guess the experience gap between the US and some of the best teams.
It's a talent gap. It's definitely an experience gap. It's
well,
definitely
I mean, look at Netherlands.
a gap in
strategy,
right? This is not, I mean, I would say
well,
that
Netherlands
with a little bit more
Virgil
experience,
van
with a little bit more
Dijk.
training, I think this team has what it takes to challenge the big guys. They just didn't have it this time.
Right, and in terms of it, I would say the Netherlands are, like, when you look at their team in terms of experience, like, first of all, the U.S. was playing with the average age of their squad is 25 as the youngest kind of starting squad in the tournament. And out of all of them, I believe only Tim Ream, who was like 35, had any World Cup experience.
DeAndre
Yedlin off the bench, though he wasn't necessarily starting. But everyone else, especially when you think of like the big guys, the new generation like McKennie, Sergio Dest, Pulisic, Way, this was all their first World Cup. Whereas for the Dutch, they had Daley Blind, very experienced player. They had Virgil van Dijk, who many consider the best center back in the world. Dumfries, yeah, was a player of the game. Memphis Depay, he started for Manchester United, Barcelona, and played for the Dutch in, I believe, 2014. The Dutch had plenty of World Cup experience, and not to mention their whole infrastructure. I mean, the Dutch have been important names in world football for decades, right? So there's a lot of, I think, infrastructure still there over like decades worth of experience and infrastructure even, and I think that makes a difference too, right? Like the US comparatively is much nearer to the game. So when you do talk about experience, there definitely is a gap there. So that is one area to come. But the thing about experience is, you can't necessarily train as much experience. It comes from playing these kinds of matches.
Yeah, so I mean, we'll see. Like the next time is going to be 2026 now, which is going to be the US, Canada, and Mexico, which is going to be very exciting for all of us because we'll be able to hopefully attend some of those games too.
Potentially.
But yeah, I mean, overall, I mean, I would say it was a solid showing overall. Like, I mean, I think I am still a little disappointed by the performance.
But frustrating though to see yet another crash out in the round of 16. I mean, haven't we seen this before against Belgium 2014, against Ghana 2010? Of course, 2006 we didn't even make it out of the group stage after losing to Ghana.
So in 2006 they actually tied Italy, who won the World Cup.
But in like 2002, we made it to the quarters. But obviously, I'm too young to really remember that. But for those of you who are under a certain age, you haven't really seen U.S. soccer greatness, at least on the men's side. We've seen plenty of it on the women's side, but at least not on the men's side. We haven't seen it.
All right. Yeah, I just had a tech issue. My point here was that, by the time we reach 2026, we're probably going to see some of those bright players that we have entering their primes, like the players I just mentioned. And the thing you have to see about these is that you really have to take your chances with these kinds of golden generations or these promising generations. And I think Belgium, this tournament has been a really great example, unfortunately, of a golden generation that kind of perhaps ended up not being able to deliver the kinds of glory or titles that people would have expected. I mean, you look back at 2014 at this Belgian team, which Romelu Lukaku was just coming up, Eden Hazard, Thibaut Courtois, a lot of these excellent players, and De Bruyne,
De
of course,
Bruyne,
was
Marwan
back in
Fellaini, like
Wolfsburg.
that was a star.
It was an
That was a star
excellent team. And if you were to tell us maybe 8 years later that this team with people in their, that this team 8 years later maybe didn't have the opportunity to make a single finals appearance, end up crashing on the group stage. I mean, what a shame that would have been back then to hear. So the point is, it's every 4 years. You only have a couple of chances to really do it when all of your stars are aligned, when all of your players are really playing in their prime. So 2026 is going to be really big for that reason. For us.
Except like I can't. It's still hard for me to get to that reality that it's been 20 years since the U.S. has won a knockout round game at the World Cup, and it's going to be 24 because we're done for this time.
I mean, here's the thing.
That means an entire
Rohan,
generation,
wait,
an entire
Rohan,
generation has gone by.
So just one thing
and
on
seen
that,
this
though.
U.S. team fail time and time again.
Okay,
around
okay, but you have to. But there is one thing you have to put into consideration. Yes, it's been 20 years, but you also have to understand the World Cup is every 4 years. It's not every year that this happens, right? If it was every year, it would look a lot worse. So, but if you're saying 20 years,
and that's true.
There's been 5 World Cups, so you can't just say like, oh, it's 20 years of like not getting it done, because it's really just 5 times where they haven't gotten it done. But that's like true with a lot of countries, right? Like look at Portugal with Cristiano Ronaldo. Look at Argentina with Lionel Messi. Neither of those countries have won a World Cup. Yes, Messi got
Argentina made
the
final in 2014 though.
Yeah, but they haven't won
this US team hasn't won a single knockout round game since 2002.
Yeah, but that's also like 5 World Cups. So I agree it's not great, but you also have to put that into perspective. It's not like actually every year they're in the World Cup, right? It's not every year. It's every 4 years. So like when you say 20 years, that's also because it's a little, I mean, it's true, but it's also a little exaggerated because in those 20 years, there's been 5 World Cups. If there was a World Cup every year or some major tournament every year, then that would like be something you could kind of say as a criticism. But like saying 20 years has passed, that while that's true, it's like, it's also a little bit like kind of not telling the whole story, because in those 20 years, it's not like every year they're in the World Cup tournament, right? Well, you have different tournaments going on. So like, that's the thing, right? Like, I mean, I do agree you have to take advantage of these opportunities, but the next time, I would say, like, I mean, hopefully in the next Copa America will be a great challenge for them, because at least in the Copa in the past, you have Argentina, you have teams like Argentina at least playing some pretty good teams. Brazil, I think, plays too sometimes. So, like, those are the types of tournaments I'd like to see them get involved in, because the CONCACAF overall, besides the US and Mexico, it's not really that strong. So it'd be nicer for the US to actually play more of these powerhouse teams more often, because that's how you actually build. And I'm not talking about exhibitions, which the US can sometimes win. I'm talking about actual matches, like meaningful matches. That would be the best way to actually grow as a team, right? Get more skill. If you play Germany in like a meaningful game sometime, or France or England, if you play these teams more often, that's how you actually get better, right? You have to like get better against playing against the best. But that's the thing, right? Like it's not really like 20 years of sort of struggling. It's more just like, I mean, it's 20 years because of the way the time cycle works with the World Cup.
Of course, it's not like it's not like we're the same place where we were 20 years ago. I think overall things have gotten a lot better.
I mean,
in the sense that
because
in the
more
sense
players
that
are Europe,
younger
right?
generations are more drawn to watching soccer. I
Also,
think
we have more
I think
players
that's a good
now
thing.
than ever in Europe,
And
right?
MLS has grown, and you're starting to see more and more star players come from Europe to play in MLS. Granted, it may be towards the tail end of their careers, but it's really elevated MLS to the international stages as a league to, if not take seriously, at least not one to just kind of dismiss and be like, okay, it's one of those joke leagues. Because I would argue like 15, 20 years ago, that's probably what it was.
Well, the MLS is also a very young league by comparison. It only was started like 26 years ago, like
96, I
1996.
believe that's when it started.
Yeah, so it's pretty like hard for a league in the US to all of a sudden grow in popularity when like the biggest money is in Europe
I mean, I
right
wouldn't
now
say
for
all of a
soccer.
sudden. I mean, 96 to now is not all of a sudden. That's
Yeah, but
like
it's
a good
still
like
but it's still kind
28
of like
years.
small. Like if you look at how like old the other leagues are, like Barclays, Premier League, La Liga, Ligue A1 in
Sorry,
France,
26 years.
Bundesliga. Like if you look at the major leagues, like in Europe, those have been around for like probably like 100 years or so, or maybe 80. I don't entirely know the actual age, but those have been around forever. So like it's hard for all of a sudden the US, even as prominent as the US is at a global level, like it's
But the
hard for
US
them
is
to
distinct.
grow.
And the US is distinct, and here's why, right? Other countries that already have strong soccer cultures, uh, I think they're pretty much near their ceiling, if not at their ceiling, in terms of developing the game even further. This country, the US, has a long way to go in terms of developing its talent and really getting the game to grow from the ground up. And I would say that as a country, we probably have an advantage in the sense that A, we have a lot more people, but B, I think the youth soccer academies are growing. And because of more and more youth interest in the sport, I think the future definitely looks promising. And to add to that, I think some of that has to do with the fact that in most other countries where soccer culture is already predominant, the demographics don't really change that much in those countries. Whereas the U.S. demographic scene has been changing for like the last few decades, right? I'm not saying that's going to change everything, but it definitely is a contributing factor in the sense that the younger generation is more prone to accepting soccer and pursuing that as a path forward. And I would definitely say that that that's the U.S. advantage going forward in the sense that other countries who are already strong don't have a growing soccer culture because it's kind of already there. But for us as a country, as a nation, I think our best days are ahead of us.
Yeah, I agree with that. On to 2026, and well, then and give another 4 years and see the soccer culture here grow even more, the infrastructure grow more, some new younger players showing up, and like I said, the players that we already have having 4 years of more experience under their belts. So no, I'm pretty excited, and home field
Yeah.
advantage.
And this is a big country. I mean, the talent is there. We just have to find it.
Yeah, I mean, the more you look at it, right? Like, I think also, like, as like we talk about American football, which is like the most popular sport in this country. The thing is, American football now, there's a lot more awareness to head injuries, right? And trauma that can come about, like CTE, we hear
Be
about it.
fair, soccer too. I mean,
Yeah, but
headers. I
like,
mean, there's concussion issues in soccer
that
as
is
well.
true, but like, I mean, it's a lot less physical than American football, right? So like, hopefully going forward, like people will sort of take soccer and then maybe like, I mean, we're seeing it more now. Like there's a lot more younger players who are playing in Europe now, like Brendan Aronson, Tyler Adams, Christian Pulisic, Josh Sargent. So many of these players are now in Europe. Even Matt Turner, he's a backup keeper now at Arsenal.
Yeah,
So
I wish that weren't the case. I wish he had stayed at New England, but that's a different story.
yeah, but that's the thing, right? Like, I mean, a lot of these people are taking these opportunities to go to Europe now, which is great. Like, that's what we need going forward. So, if this continues in 2026, then I mean, I feel a lot better. Obviously, I still don't know how you're going to compare to the European powerhouses, but I mean, at least you have a better shot now than you did probably ever, right?
I think we're a long way from actually defeating European powerhouses, but I think we're give it 4 or 8 years time. I think the U.S. team will have enough to if not win, but at least wreak some havoc.
Yeah, that's possible. I mean, I wouldn't rule it out. I mean, at some point it could happen, but we'll see. I mean, that's the thing; it's hard to know. But yeah, I guess it'll be interesting to sort of follow the rest of this tournament out and sort of see what happens. Obviously, Argentina beat Australia yesterday, 2-1, so they're going to be playing Netherlands next. A rematch of 2014, actually, the semifinal in 2014, which Argentina won, and then they lost to Germany in the final. So it'll be nice to see that rematch coming up next weekend. But in the meantime, I guess yeah, that will sort of do it for today's episode. Does anyone else want to discuss anything?
Well, it's going to be a great tournament going forward. I still love the game. Of course, we're out, but I'm going to continue to support like to support the game as it stands. Of course, there might be other structural issues with the way the tournament's been conducted. I think that's been discussed in the past, but if you're just a casual viewer who's like watching on TV, go watch. It's good stuff.
All right, so that'll do it for this week's episode. We'll be back again next weekend, probably discussing the Patriots, Cardinals, Monday night matchup, the Celtics, Bruins. This was more of a soccer specific episode, and we'll continue to talk about the FIFA World Cup. World Cup is final is still in 2 weeks, so we'll definitely be continuing to talk about it. We'll talk about the other Boston teams again next week. But until then, enjoy the rest of your weekend, everyone, and yeah, just enjoy the World Cup.
All right, peace.
Have a great day.